Hey everybody, this is going to be a real fast video right here. I just want to let you know that there are some really amazing things going on with the 10th month that we just entered. I want to talk about the codes that Jesus talked about. I think it might be significant that Jesus said we won't know the day or the hour, as opposed to saying we won't know the time, because he could have just said, you won't know the time that the Son of Man comes, but instead he said you won't know the day or the hour. So that may imply that it's possible to know the month. And I'm not saying this is it. I just want to show this to you. We just entered the true 10th month on January 20th and 21st, which was the new moon and the first crescent. If you're not familiar with the ancient calendar, watch the video linked in the description below. But the start of the true 10th month lined up this year with the start of Obama's 7th year. And the reason that matters is there are codes in Esther 2 that indicate the bride will be taken in the 10th month of the 7th year of the king's reign. And as far as I know, this has never happened like this before. First of all, I don't even know of a time that the true 10th month started exactly on January 20th. I don't even know of a time that the new moon landed on January 20th. I'm sure it's somewhere in history. I don't know where. But there are three things that converged on January 20th. The new moon that landed on January 20th. That's rare. The start of the true 10th month on that new moon. Again, right there on January 20th, very rare. And the start of Obama's 7th year exactly on the same day is very, very rare. Last year in 2014, the true 10th month started on January 1st, which was also kind of rare, but it wasn't Obama's 7th year. Technically, it was still Obama's 5th year. So Obama's first year started on January 20th, 2009. So his second year started on January 20th, 2010. The third year in 2011. The fourth year in 2012. The fifth year on January 20th, 2013. The sixth year on January 20th, 2014. And the 7th year started last week on January 20th, 2015, which coincidentally coincided with, like I said, the new moon and the start of the 10th month on that new moon. And the reason it's significant that it's Obama's 7th year and not somebody else is because Obama was specifically mentioned by Gabriel in the book of Daniel. I mean, this is huge. This is huge. So the codes in the 10th month, let me just start with what Jesus said in Matthew 24:22, because it appears he's referencing the story of Esther. The first thing mentioned in Matthew 22 is that Jesus is giving a parable. It's a riddle. That means the story is not literal. He says the kingdom of heaven is like a certain king, which made a marriage and sent forth his servants to call them that were bidden to the wedding, but they wouldn't come. So he invites a bunch of people. They refused to come to the wedding. Then he says in verse 4, he prepared a dinner and invited them, but they made light of it. And it's talking about the remnant. That word remnant literally means left behind. So the remnant made light of it, and they went their ways, and they killed the servants who invited them in some cases. So verse 8 says the wedding is ready, but they which were bidden were not worthy. He actually said they were murderers. So in verse 10, he says, everybody is invited. Gather all, both good and bad. So that's the wheat and the tares right there. Because remember Matthew 13, he says the wheat and the tares will not be separated until the harvest. That's the asteroid impact, the rescue and the asteroid impact. So he says here in verse 10, everybody's invited. Gather all, both good and bad. But then in verse 14, many are called, but few are chosen. So this is Matthew 22 right here. The kingdom of heaven. It's like a certain king who made a marriage, prepared a dinner, and invited people who refused to come to that dinner. Everyone's invited, both good and bad. Many are called, but few are chosen. And this riddle is continued in Matthew 25. It says the kingdom of heaven is like 10 virgins, which went forth to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were wise, 5 of them were foolish. So everyone's invited. But out of everyone, there were 10 virgins, symbolically, that went forth to meet the bridegroom. So everybody's invited, but some of them go forth to meet the bridegroom, but only half of the ones that go forth actually go to the wedding. That's what this story is telling us. But it says the bridegroom tarried in verse 5. That word means delayed. So while the bridegroom was delayed, they all slumbered and slept. And at midnight the bridegroom came, but the lamps of the foolish were gone out. Okay, blah, blah, blah. We all know that story. Then verse 10, the bridegroom came, and they that were ready went in with him to the marriage, and the door was shut. And afterward the virgin said, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he said, I don't even know you. Okay. Watch therefore, you don't know the day or the hour when the Son of Man comes. That phrase, Son of Man comes, it literally translates to descendants of humans go. So we talked about that in the last few videos. It occurs at the end of a 1260-year period when the asteroid impacts, and the texts say everyone on earth will see it happen. It says the descendants of humans will go on the clouds to heaven. It will be like a flash, like lightning, and there will be an earthquake, because that's also when the asteroid hits. So he says, you don't know the day or the hour that's going to happen, but that implies you might know the month. Because the story seems oddly paralleled in the book of Esther. In verse 5, it says the king makes a feast. So remember, Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is like a certain king who made a dinner. Okay, so it says the king made a feast 7 days upon a pavement of red, white, and blue. We'll talk about that in a minute. And in verse 10, it says on the 7th day, the queen was asked to come to the feast, but verse 12, the queen refused. So if you read this story like you would read a novel, it's going to sound really creepy, and that's not the point. I think it's important to understand that these codes in the Bible had to survive thousands of years of tyranny. They had to survive through thousands of kings, and the only way the text could survive is if the kings liked the stories. So the stories are just the cover. The real message is in the literary codes, the words and phrases, and we find those codes by looking at what Jesus said. He said this is a riddle. The king's feast represents the rescue at the harvest, and the queen represents those who were invited to the wedding who refused to come. The queen also represents Babylon the Great. Verse 2 of Revelation 18, Babylon the Great is fallen. In verse 7, she says in her heart, I sit a queen. Then in verse 8, therefore shall her plagues come in one day. Those plagues are the 7 vials of wrath. There's a video on it linked in the description below. It's the asteroid. It will hit in one day. The queen is Babylon the Great, that great city, verse 10, whose judgment comes in literally 1 hour. It's the asteroid. Verse 21, a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea, saying, thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down. Verse 23, the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. And that is because the bride is taken to heaven at that time. Revelation 21, I saw a new heaven and a new earth. The first heaven and first earth was passed away, and I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven, prepared as a bride. So the asteroid shifts the earth on its axis. We know that. It tells us that in the text. The earth reels to and fro. The earth will shake at Babylon's fall. It says that over and over again. That's why afterward, the stars are in different places in the sky. That's why it says there's a new heaven and a new earth, because everything's changed. There's upheavals on the earth. Okay, so it says that the bride is those that are rescued, and they come back to the earth after the event. So in Esther 2, the code phrases here are the wrath of the king, and this phrase here where it says he remembered Vashti and what she had done. That's in Revelation 18 in reference to the queen, Babylon the Great. Verse 5, God remembered her iniquities. And then verse 7, how much she glorified herself and lived deliciously. And she said in her heart, I sit a queen. And that is the great city. Verse 10, which is this pink area right here. We talk about this in the videos, the video called The Dragon, the Beast, and the Harem. It's linked below. This area is also called Sodom, and it's also called Egypt. The whole area, that's the queen. It's the people that worship the beast, Yehovah. Hosea 13 tells us that straight out. The religious system that worships the murdering beast. Jesus said the remnant are murderers. That's why they're left behind. The bride will be taken out of Babylon. So in the story of Esther, the codes are the wrath of the king in verse 1, and he remembered the queen and what she had done. It's talking about the religious system, and the wrath represents the asteroid impact. We've talked about all that before in the video on the trumpets that's linked below. Then it references here the 10 virgins in verse 3. Gather all the virgins and let the ones that please the king be queen instead of Vashti. It's all symbolic. This kingdom of heaven right up here is like 10 virgins that go to meet the bridegroom. Only half of them go to the wedding. In other words, only half go to the safe place in heaven, because the kingdom of heaven, it says, is like a certain king who made a marriage, and those that were invited would not come. That's the remnant, those left behind. The murderers who worship their father, the liar, the murderer, they don't go because because they aren't worthy. They're killing those who invited them. Therefore, Jesus said to them, the kingdom of God will be taken from them and given to the nation, bringing forth the fruits of heaven. It's the nation. It's the multitude of all tribes and nations, Revelation 7. The queen represents the remnant, Babylon the Great. She says, I sit a queen. Then it says in Esther 2, verse 17, that Esther was made queen instead of Vashti. In other words, she was made the bride of the king. In other words, she represents those who will be rescued, some of them out of Babylon the Great even, which is where the asteroid will hit. The Sea of Babylon seems to be the Atlantic Ocean. But notice verse 19 says, the virgins were gathered together a second time. So that seems to be referring to after the 3.5 year tribulation. So it's the second half of the virgins. Remember, half of them go to the safe place, the other half stay behind. So it's referencing the end of the 3.5 year tribulation. We've talked about that before as well, because the remnant give glory to God at the end when the two witnesses ascend up. Right here, the remnant arise trembling. We talked about that in the Revelation 11 video. It's linked below as well. So what Jesus was describing in Matthew 22 and Matthew 25 align with the codes in the story of Esther. A certain king who prepared a dinner and invited the remnant, but they refused to come because they sit like a queen on the earth right now. And the virgins represent the bride. But notice, the five wise virgins. But notice the bride Esther was taken in verse 16. Esther was taken in the 10th month, in the 7th year of the king's reign. So we are in the true 10th month right now that started exactly on the first day of Obama's 7th year. And Obama is the leader that Gabriel referred to in the book of Daniel. And Gabriel told Daniel that the city and the hallowed thing will be destroyed in the midst of that 7-year period right here, which we're in right now. So he said it will be destroyed by a flood. He said, so Babylon the great city will be destroyed by a stone hitting the sea. That's Revelation 18. It'll be destroyed by the waves. Jeremiah 50. In the midst of the 7 years. Daniel 9. At the end of the 1260-year period. Daniel 12, Revelation 12, and Matthew 24. So Adam Clarke, I'm reading this right here, wrote in 1825 that the 1260-year period should start in 755 CE, the actual year Pepin the Short invaded Lombard territory, resulting in the Pope's elevation from a subject of the Byzantine Empire to an independent head of state. The donation of Pepin, which first occurred in 754 and again in 756, gave to the Pope temporal power of the Papal States. However, his introductory comments on Daniel 7 added 756 as an alternative commencement date. It's talking about Adam Clarke right there. But remember, Adam Clarke specifically said 755, which would end in 2015. So it was sometime between 754 and 756. So that means it ends sometime between 2015 and 2016. But a lot of people know that, but no one realizes that this is perfectly coinciding with the last 2 years of Daniel's 7 years that we're in right now. I wish more people knew about this, but the texts say they won't listen. I mean, it said that. And we're in the true 10th month right now, in the 7th year of the president's reign. And one more thing, the king in the story of Esther reigned over 127 provinces right here in verse 1. And the feast was on a pavement of red, white, and blue right here. So that may be a reference to the United States. I noticed that Adopt a U.S. Soldier is now active in 127 countries as of January 1st, 2012. And also in 2012, around 5,000 products from 127 countries entered the United States duty-free. So I don't know, maybe that means something. Maybe Obama literally is presiding over 127 countries right now. I'm no expert about this. I just want you to know how close we are. I mean, Gabriel gave precise details about Obama's presidency for a reason. Maybe it's because that's when the asteroid's going to hit. We're in his 7th year right now. It started last week. It started on the exact date of the first day of the true 10th month, and we will be in the true 10th month until February 17th. Next week, it'll also be February 4th. You might remember the vision that I saw back in 2013 of the 2, the 4, the 1, and the 5. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. Jesus said we won't know the day or the hour. I'm not saying that. I just wanted to point that out. It's a watch date. I also saw that vision of the football game. Remember that? That was years ago. That was like in 2012, and it wasn't even around. It was like in the summertime of 2012 or something. I don't know if it has anything to do with that, but that's falling in this 10th month period right now as well. I just want to let you guys know what's going on. So that's pretty much it. I will talk to you later. Okay, bye-bye.